And hello everybody and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. This is the beginning of the week, sort of. It's Tuesday, or depending on when you're listening to this. I'm recording this on a Tuesday. I meant to record on a Monday, but that didn't happen. But welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I'm your host Christian. This is the beginning of the week-ish. So this means this is the spoiler-filled review podcast. Every beginning of the week, well, not every beginning of the week. Let's not get crazy. I'm not going to review every movie I watch because that would be insane. But if you're new to the podcast, I just want to mention that at the beginning of every week, I'm gonna try to make it on Mondays, not Tuesdays, or again, depending on when you're listening to this. At the beginning of the week, we will be spoiler reviewing movies that have come out over the week. This week, of course, is Transformers: The Last Knight. Unfortunately. But we'll be reviewing that, and of course, by the end of the podcast, I will be previewing what we'll be reviewing next week. Hopefully next week, since it is a long holiday weekend. But let's just get right to it, because this movie is just a heads up. But besides this being a spoiler review, I'm probably gonna swear a lot in this review. Because this movie is so fucking dumb.
It started as a legend. One of the greatest of all. 1,000 years we've kept it hidden. To protect Earth from what was destined to arrive.
Optimus Prime, you destroyed your home. Do you seek redemption?
My maker. I do.
Your daughter, what would you say to her?
Brush your teeth, work hard. Stay away from any boy in a band, especially a drummer.
These are troubled times. Without leaders, chaos reigns. Two worlds colliding. You're all that stand in its way. And now the greatest mission of them all, to turn the tide of human history.
Frank, stop! Can't do this!
The imminent destruction of everything we know and love begins.
I'm not leaving you.
When all seems lost, a few brave souls can save everything we've ever known.
The operation is over.
We're not giving up on Prime, okay?
I want to stay, and I want to fight them.
For my world to live, yours must die.
Alright, so I'm going to try to lay out the plot or story, or lack thereof, really, of this movie. So the movie starts off, as we've seen in the trailers, it starts off in the Dark Ages, during the Dark Ages. And we see King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table and the rest of his army fighting off another army in a losing battle. They're losing like crazy. And the knights are telling Arthur to retreat because they're losing so many men and there's no point in waiting for Merlin because they don't believe in Merlin and his magic. And then Arthur says, no, we're waiting. Merlin will be here. His magic is real. Have faith. So we cut to Merlin, and it's like a faraway shot. He's riding on this horse. He looks all badass. It looks like it's going to be like this really cool moment. And then it cuts to him in a closer shot, and he's out of breath, and he makes this corny joke. And it's played by Stanley Tucci, who Stanley Tucci was already in a Transformers movie. He played one of the guys in I can't remember his name, in the last film, but he's playing Merlin in this movie, and just for this particular opening part, because he's not in the rest of the movie. And he makes a joke like, he's out of breath, and then he boozes up, and he's a comic relief character. He's not the Merlin that we know from like all the Arthurian stories. So, during this, Arthur's army is getting killed, and Merlin goes to a mountaintop where there's an alien spaceship, and that's where we see our first kind of our first Transformer, because for the most part he's out of screen. And I don't know if it's just the screen I was watching, maybe the IMAX was different, but the version that I saw, it was like he was half out of screen most of the time. So Merlin is there, he's pleading with these Transformers that King Arthur and him needs their help, and the Transformers, who we find out is a knight, gives Merlin a staff, which becomes the famous and mythical Merlin staff, which is actually a Transformer's weapon, to give him control over a three-headed Transformer that we've seen in the trailers and stuff, which is actually all the knights combining together to make the three-headed Transformer, dragon, whatever you want to call it. Because that's what needs to happen, I guess. I don't know. So then we cut, literally on the screen it says, cut 600 years later. And we see a floating Optimus Prime in space. And then, boom, opening credits. That's it. Transformers The Last Night pops up on screen. So then we cut to the humans of the character. The human characters of the movie. So we first get introduced to Isabella, played by, ironically, Isabella Moner. I think that's how you say her last name. She saves a bunch of kids who go into this area in Chicago that's still busted up from Part 3, Dark of the Moon. And then they get found by this, literally it looks like something out of RoboCop. It looks like the robots from RoboCop. But they actually belong to the TRF, which is a new government agency that hunts down Transformers and kills them. Even though the Autobots have saved this planet multiple times, they still go down and hunt Transformers no matter if they're Autobots or the Decepticons. They're going to kill the Transformers because they're aliens, and because we get these little brief snippets before all this happens that Transformers have been crashing on Earth, and there's been more Transformers battles in multiple areas, so it's getting out of control. So they end up, the kids, Isabella and all these bunch of kids, they have their own little moment, and Isabella has her own Transformer. I forgot his name. He does have a name, but I forget it. But she's the only one that can understand him, even though he's not speaking English, somehow. And they get saved by Cade Yeager, of course, Mark Wahlberg, who is now a fugitive, apparently, and is apparently become a legend among some people because he helps Transformers out. So they, it's a little action scene here and there, and then when the kids go away, Mark Wahlberg goes back to check on this spaceship that the kids found. And he goes in and he sees a wounded Transformer who apparently has been there since the third movie, because screw it. And he's dying, and Mark Wahlberg's trying to tell him that everything's gonna be okay. And the Transformer, which we later find out is a knight, because there's a car alarm going off, because for some reason he's a knight that was there for some reason. He tries to hand him this medallion, and Mark Wahlberg says he doesn't want it, but we later found out that the medallion attaches itself to Mark Wahlberg later on in the movie, and they will play a factor, a quote-unquote factor, although it really doesn't, later on in the movie. So anyway, after some action, this goes into another action scene where we finally see Bumblebee for the first time. And Bumblebee apparently has this new skill that is only used once, because when he pops in, he's trying to save Mark Wahlberg because the TRF surrounds him. And he's trying to save Mark Wahlberg's character, Cade Yeager, and he breaks apart. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know if they shot him or something, but he breaks apart, and it looks like, oh, Bumblebee's dead. Nope. Because apparently he can reattach himself like a T-1000 to all his body parts and reattach himself, and that's a new skill he has. That's not seen. That was never seen before. That's not seen again in the movies. That's apparently a new skill that Bumblebee has. So Kate escapes, but not before seeing, having a little, a stare down with Lennox, played by Josh Duhamel, who returns to the series, who's now one of the leaders of the TRF, or works for the TRF. He's now one of the leaders of the TRF. There is a leader of the TRF. I think his name was Santos. I didn't write down the actor's name, but he's not. The character's not really that important. So anyway, Kate escapes unscathed by the Transformers and the Autobots, we cut to him going to a junkyard. Apparently, he owns a junkyard now. I believe it's somewhere in South Dakota, something like that. They did say, I just forgot what it was. But it's a junkyard, and he's there, and apparently he has this guy that works with him, Jimmy, played by Gerard Carmichael, who really serves no purpose for the movie other than being another comic relief character. And when he hides there, he's in hiding with other Autobots. The other Autobots are Bumblebee, Hound, voiced by John Goodman, Crosshairs, voiced by John DiMaggio, and Drift, Ken Watanabe. And some of the Dinobots. We see some of the Dinobots and some of the mini Dinobots who have no purpose in the movie other than being little tiny Autobots and a toy for you to buy. That's it. So he goes there, and we get to see a little bit more. We get to see what he's been doing. He's been hiding the Autobots. He's been fixing them up. There's another Autobot voiced by Steve Buscemi in the movie. He's like a trader or day trader or something. I think they actually call him day trader. So he's there, and he brings them parts and stuff, and they're trying to fix Bumblebee's voice still. And we find out that Isabella, she snuck on to one of the Transformers without him knowing, apparently, and she sneaks in, and then she goes in and she tries to convince Kay that she can be useful, and then she gives her speech, a really big, kind of like a big rousing speech that happens way too early in the movie, and really there was no need for that big of a speech that early in the movie, and we see part of the speech in the movie. She's I want to stay and I want to fight them. That's the speech that she gives him to stay, to convince him to let her stay, because she doesn't have a family. She gets this backstory that her family was in Chicago during the invasion in Part 3, and she wasn't home, but her parents were. So she doesn't have anywhere else to go. And that's why she's so connected to the Transformers in a way, because they're kind of the only family she has left. And in the beginning of the movie, when she's saving the kids, there is another Transformer, Canopy was the name, and it ends up getting killed by the TRF. And she says that was the only family I had left besides the little Transformer that she has around that she can understand. So that's Isabella's character, and all this setup for Isabella at the end of the day makes no sense, because she's not even a factor for the rest of the movie. Her character literally serves a purpose only for the first act. It sets her up like she's going to be like this main player for the rest of the movie, which is not the case, because she does after the first act's over. That's it, she's gone. Second half of the movie, she's nowhere to be around, because the action moves to London. And then the third act of the film, when everything's starting to go to hell, she does reappear, but even then her character doesn't really serve a purpose. It's kind of weird that they would set up her character this strongly in the first, literally kind of like the first half hour of the movie, and she's nowhere to be seen for the rest of it until the very end. Makes absolutely no sense. But anyway, let's move on. At this point, we're still getting introduced to other characters, but we do cut to Optimus Prime, who gets sucked into this broken planet thing that we see in all the trailers, that everyone kind of assumed may be Unicron. Nope, it's actually Cybertron. Cybertron is returned, and it's this big old planet-looking thing, and it's being controlled by this weird-looking humanoid transformer called Quintessa. Who is, according to her, the prime of life, aka the creator of the Transformers that Optimus was looking for at the end of the last movie. And she tells Optimus that Earth has a hidden secret, which we later find out in the movie I'm going to be jumping around because this movie actually does a lot of jumping around and makes no fucking sense. But we find out that Earth is actually Unicron. And apparently, Quintessa wants to suck the life out of Earth / Unicron to rebuild Cybertron to its former glory and basically make it the planet that it once was. And she, of course, makes Optimus evil. I say evil, quote. You should read evil, quote unquote, because when he finds out that Quintessa wants to destroy Earth or Unicron, Optimus is like, "No, that's my new planet. That's my new home." And then, basically, what Quintessa does is she just bitch slaps him and gives him like this weird, like, looking scar on his face. And she's like, "No, we're doing this." And he's like, "Okay, that's fine. Yeah, all right." There's literally like no real pushback. Like, Optimus is like, he's down for destroying Earth so that Cybertron can be rebuilt. Just like that. And this is before he gets brainwashed into being evil, by the way. And he's not really evil, because after this, after he finds out Quintessa's plan, Optimus disappears. He literally disappears for the whole movie until the very end. It makes... I don't know. That's what happens. So anyway, going back to the introduction of the new characters, we meet Laura Hoddick's character Vivian Wembley, which maybe some people will know as Peter Quill's mother in Guardians of the Galaxy, because that's who it is. I didn't realize that's who it was until I saw the credits. Like when I was doing when I was setting up the podcast last week, I was like, "Why does that name sound familiar?" Oh, that's right, it's Peter Quill's mother, who is apparently British. I didn't know that either. But anyway, her character Vivian Wembley is a Oxford professor who we don't meet teaching for the first time. We actually meet her playing some sort of game. I forget what the game was. But then she goes to teach her students, talking about the Arthurian legends that we saw at the beginning part of the movie. And we see paintings of Arthur with a transformer standing behind him, and we get to see the three-headed transformer again. And she comes off a bit snobbish, a little bit. Like, she doesn't, like, fully like, she's trying to be funny with her students, but it comes off a bit snobbish because she doesn't truly believe in any of the magical side of what's going on, even though she's teaching all this stuff. And there's another part that doesn't get to me, and there's another part that I'll explain a little bit later with her character, why she doesn't know any of what's really going on. But again, that'll make more sense they'll somewhat make more sense when I get to a little bit later. So this leads us into the introduction of Anthony Hopkins' character. He plays a character named Sir Edmund Burton, who has a Transformer butler named Cogman, voiced by Jim Carter from Downton Abbey, who has very psychopathic tendencies in the movie. I'll let you discover those. Or if you already... Actually, you know what? No. I usually say, if you haven't seen the movie while you're listening to this podcast, I would recommend you listen to this podcast just to see and just to know how dumb this movie is. Anyway, he also has another Transformer with him, Hot Rod, which is a character that many Transformers fans are familiar with. Some people actually consider him a fan favorite, some people don't. But he's in the movie. He's voiced by Omar Sy, who is a French actor. He was also in Jurassic World. He played Chris Pratt's best friend in the movie, or the guy he works with. And he has a French accent. And he even says in the movie, I don't have a French accent. I got the French accent from living here for so long. I hate the French accent. But anyway, Hot Rod is apparently he was disguised as Vivian's car because Sir Edmund Burton, Anthony Hopkins' character, he's basically kind of been the keeper of the secrets of the Transformer history, of the real Transformer history, and has been searching for the last descendant of the Wewickian, I think that's how you pronounce it, Wewickian line, which is Vivian. Because, surprise, Vivian is related to Merlin the Wizard, and is the only one that can hold his staff, which everyone in this movie is looking for, because apparently the reason why the Transformers keep coming to Earth, not the Allspark, not the Fallen or the Seed or the Transformium, no, It was Merlin's staff, which again is really a Transformers weapon, and Earth is really Unicron. That's why the Transformers keep coming to Earth. You know, not the fact that Optimus Prime keeps sending messages out at the end of every fucking movie to say, hey, Autobots, any Autobots out there, come to Earth. No. It's this. It's Merlin's staff and the fact that Earth is Unicron. That's why Transformers keep coming to Earth. But Vivian is the only one that can hold the staff and keep it out of the hands of the Autobot anyone who's trying to basically use it. And she's the last descendant of the Wikian line. She's related to Merlin, and apparently she's the next part of the keeper of all the secrets of what's going on. And the Decepticons are also in this movie. Megatron's in this movie. He's got the whole new look and the big ass sword that I don't think he ever uses. Barricade's also back in this movie. The cop Transformer. And some other Decepticons, because apparently Megatron makes a deal with the TRF and the government to release some Decepticons that were locked up. I don't know why they weren't killed like every other Transformer, but they were locked up in a scene that, I'm not kidding you, is literally like Suicide Squad, because they have their small little scene of what they did or what they were doing of being, or the scene of them being released. And then their name gets blasted on the screen in a freeze frame, and that's the Decepticons and Megatron in the movie. And for those of you wondering, they don't do anything. They literally don't do anything in this movie. They die pretty quickly. And some of them, once again, are very stereotypical / slightly racist robots. Because Michael Bay has learned nothing. Or he thinks that we're all stupid and that we all forgot what he did before. So there you have it. That's what's going on in Transformers. That is the basic outline of what's going on in Transformers. There's some other stuff probably I forgot, or it doesn't fucking matter. It makes The Last Knight this is a really messy movie. And it doesn't do it any favors whatsoever that it's just a badly written movie. The beginning isn't that bad. I actually kind of like the King Arthur stuff, especially the way it was shot. It was like that wasn't that bad. But as the movie keeps going on and starts adding mythology and lore to the movie after everything we've seen already, it just doesn't work. Because when Cade and Vivian get to London and meet Edmund for the first time, he starts telling them everything that he knows. And he starts telling Vivian, her family tree. Which, if she's a history expert, this is what I was talking about earlier. If she's a history expert, how the hell doesn't she know that she's related to Merlin? Even if she doesn't believe in all the magical side of things, and this is the other part that bothers me. It's like, okay, it's like you have Anthony Hopkins' character, Sir Edmund, trying to keep, the Transformers history, the long history apparently, of them being on Earth, a secret, but there's still paintings and shit in the museum at Oxford where she's teaching. And if they've been around for so long, how come no one knew about it? It's just like, the Transformers landed on Earth in the first movie, and we've been, they've been landing on Earth for so long, now we're starting to find, stuff. No! That's so stupid! Anyway, she should have found out. She's a history teacher, or history professor. They would have added at least some sort of struggle, and maybe some depth to her character, instead of being like this snobbish. But even when she meets Cade and Edmund, she still comes off a little like standoffish and stop. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, she's a woman. No, I'm not trying to make it a sexist thing, because I know someone's gonna think that. No, she comes off as, if this was anyone else's character, I would have said the exact same thing. Even Cade, when he arrives in London, he's like, I don't got time for your shit, old man. You better tell me why I'm here. That's literally what he says, pretty much. So, anyway, he also tells Cade what the medallion he has is for, and apparently he's worthy of being a knight. Yes, because we later find out that Mark Wahlberg, not Optimus Prime, who is the most worthy candidate of the name The Last Knight. No. Mark fucking Wahlberg, Cade Yeager, is the last knight in this movie.
Son of a bitch!
Why? Because fuck you. That's why. Not Optimus Prime, not Bumblebee, Cade Yeager, a human. Does it play a factor in the movie? No, it doesn't. One scene at the end of the movie. When actually no, I'll get to that when we get to it. Because during that scene as well, when Edmund is telling them everything, it's basically an exposition dump. Like Anthony Hopkins reads like he goes on for like 10 minutes of telling the story of the Transformers and telling them everything that they need to know. Because in this room that he shows them, and we see the room in the trailers, you know, that big ass table, it's actually King Arthur's round table. And it's in this room. We see a bunch of posters, and we see a bunch of frames of famous people like Harriet Tubman and Lincoln and Shakespeare and all these big names that we all know. Apparently, they were part of protecting the Transformers history, which they didn't do a very good job at. Again, because we see paintings and stuff in Oxford, but we also see propaganda posters of the Transformers during World War II that show Bumblebee. Because Bumblebee and another Transformer that we see who has no name were there during World War II, which again was never mentioned before. And Edmund, when he first meets Bumblebee like 5 minutes before this, he says, "Oh hey, nice to see you again. I met you when I was a little boy." And Bumblebee is like, "I don't know you. I don't remember this person. I don't know who this guy is." So he remembers nothing. And in this little snippet scene that we see it briefly in the trailers, the Nazi headquarters, that Bumblebee's there, and he's just being a badass. And apparently he has a nickname that I forgot the nickname, but it's Bumblebee and another Transformer basically killing a bunch of Nazis. And that's it. That's the only little World War II snippet that we see. And Bumblebee remembers none of this, apparently. I don't know. And look, I get it. Okay, I get it. You don't go see a Transformers movie for story or for plot. You want to watch it to turn your brain off and just watch shit blow up in front of you. But eventually, it all just becomes noise. It all becomes incoherent nonsense that I can't get behind. And apparently not a lot of people are getting behind because this has been the lowest domestic box office gain for the Transformers movie. But I'm sorry, these movies just keep getting worse and worse. I enjoyed the first Transformers movie. I think out of all of them, the first Transformers movie is the best one. And that's saying a lot because that was the first movie. I mean, it's not a great movie, but it's the better Transformers movie. And they just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I enjoyed parts of Dark of the Moon. I did. But these movies are terrible. The jokes, quote unquote, are cringeworthy or not funny at all. I will admit some jokes work. I did laugh at a few jokes. I'll give the movie that. But overall, they were bad. And the worst part, oh my god, the worst thing, well, there's a lot of things that are wrong in this movie, but the worst joke-wise or pun-wise in this movie is Bumblebee's stupid-ass pun at the end of the movie when he blasts Quintessa from behind with his gun, and he says something like, Optimus is like, "Let me introduce you to my friend Bumblebee," and then he blasts her, and apparently she dies. Of course, she doesn't die. I'll get to that later. She doesn't die. He's like, "Stings like a bee," or something stupid along those lines that literally made me facepalm so hard that I looked at my brother who was sitting next to me, and he had the same expression on his face. And my brother and I watch a lot of movies, and we watch a lot of bad movies, and we have never, if at all, looked at each other in such shock and just, I can't even put it into words. It was so stupid. I'm sorry if I'm screaming. I'm sorry for all you headphone users. Anyway, let's go back to the action. Well, let's go to the action, I guess. Meh. The other movies at least have some decent action scenes. And the action here, which was, if I had to pick something for the best quote unquote action scene in this movie, it was probably the already promoted like crazy fight between Optimus and Bumblebee. And even that, it was just, again, it was meh. I say best in quotation marks. The majority of the fight we see in the trailers. We get a little extra little snippets here and there. But the majority of the fight is basically Optimus throwing around Bumblebee like a rag doll, pretty much, and slamming him on the ground. And at this point, this is when Optimus returns, because he's been gone for the whole movie, pretty much. And he just comes back like all of a sudden. He's like, he kills like a knight from behind. He's like, I need that staff. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to kill you. Because I need Cybertron back. And in order for my world to survive, your Earth has to die. And give me that staff or I'll kill you. And, you know, he takes the staff from Vivian, which they find the staff at this point. And he takes it, and that's when Bumblebee runs after him and starts fighting him. And he doesn't stay evil for long. He fights Bumblebees, you know, he's messing him up a little bit. But he doesn't stay evil for long. Because the way that Optimus breaks free from Contessa's control is that Bumblebee finally uses his real voice. Somehow, we see Cade and Isabella at the beginning of the movie working on Bumblebee's voice, and we've seen a little bit in the commercials where, you know, he gets the Surrey voice. But we never see them working on his voice again. But for that one scene, and I literally mean one scene, he's basically telling Optimus, hey, I have been your greatest friend, and you have been a great leader, and if I have to give my life, then I will. Basically, something along those lines, using his real voice. Not using, like, radio snippets or talking to the radio. He uses his real voice for that one scene, and Optimus breaks free of Quintessa's control. And that's when he goes back to being good Optimus. And it's basic, and this is something that was brought up over at Blurred Vision with Jordan. That's the guy that runs the Blurred Vision podcast. And it's something that when I was listening to his review, because I was gonna do this review on Monday, and I was gonna release it on Monday, but then, you know, I didn't do it because I had stuff to do. So I heard his podcast that night, and he basically brought up all the points that I was going to bring up. And I was like, should I still do this review and still mention this? But I am still going to mention it, because just in case you don't listen to Blurred Vision, it's basically, when Bumblebee uses his real voice on Optimus Prime, it's basically like the way they stop the Batman and Superman fighting. It's the Martha of the Transformers movie. Because he uses his real voice, and Optimus is like, you know, he has those purple eyes when he's in Quintessa's control. Like, his eyes turn to blue. He's like, I haven't heard your voice in years, old friend. And that's how he breaks free from Quintessa. It's basically the Martha scene of Transformers of last night. It's the only way this fight stops. Because Optimus Prime is literally about to kill. Like, he's going to smash his sword into Bumblebee's face. And that's how it stops. So after this, you know, Prime is like, oh, I'm sorry. And then the Knights that were defending the staff come in, and they start beating up on Optimus Prime because, you know, he was evil, and he's like, how dare you? They're like, how dare you fall under, you know, Quintessa's, you know, control and mind games and all this stuff. And they're about to behead him. They're literally about to kill him. And there's this one Knight who's literally about to, he's in full swing. Like, he's gonna, like, just decapitate Optimus Prime. And Mark Wahlberg, Cade Yeager's character, you know, he it looks like he's about to jump in front of him to get killed, obviously. But the medallion that he still has attached, it extends all over his arm, and somehow makes a sword. It makes a sword, but somehow Mark Wahlberg, a human, is able to stop a full swing of a giant-ass robot who's about to decapitate Optimus Prime. That's how Optimus Prime gets saved. By Mark Wahlberg's character having a sword out of the medallion that he has attached to him, stopping a full-on... he puts his back into it, like, literally, into that swing, and Cade Yeager just, you know, puts his hand out and stops the sword. And that's what stops the Knights from trying to kill Optimus, because they see that Cade Yeager is worthy enough to be a Knight, and they salute him, and they stop trying to kill Prime. And at that point, Optimus, like, we gotta work together, guys. We gotta go stop Quintessa from sucking the life out of Earth and Unicron and trying to rebuild Cybertron. Because apparently Optimus, like, this is my home. Like, I don't want, like, Cybertron, I guess, had its chance. Which for some reason, now that I say that out loud, I feel like that was a line from one of the Transformers movies. I literally feel like that was a line from a Transformers movie. Which, if it was, that's kind of dumb. Anyway, look, all in all, I don't want to keep talking about The Last Knight because I feel my blood pressure rising. The Last Knight is just another Transformers movie. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for you is completely up to you. Personally, this is a dumbass movie. I can't get behind it. I can't even defend it a little bit. Nothing about this movie makes any sense whatsoever. Oh, let me I forgot. Let me mention the post-credit scene, because there was a post-credit scene in this movie that implies where the series is going. And despite us knowing that they're going to keep making these movies no matter what, some of the promotion says that this is the final chapter. First of all, fuck off. Fuck you for even saying that, because we all know it's not true. Second of all, come on, really? Really? The final chapter? No. Anyway, the post-credit scene, and this is during the open, like the first, like the mid-credit scene, I guess. There's no actual post-credit scene. There's only a mid-credit scene. We see, because in the movie, I forgot to mention this earlier in the movie. We find out that Earth is Unicron. Before that, at the beginning of the movie, we see like these horns sticking up in different parts of the world. And we find out that once Earth is Unicron, those are actually the horns of Unicron that he has. And Unicron, by the way, if I've been mentioning Unicron and you're not a big Transformers person, Unicron is like this. He's basically like one of the big bads of the Transformers universe. And he's not really a planet. He's a Transformer that disguises himself as a planet, from what I can remember. But he's basically the big bad of the Transformers universe. So this post-credit scene, we see a human Quintessa. Yes, a human Quintessa. Quintessa's alive, and she's actually played by the person that voices her in the movie, Gemma Chan. And she goes to one of these structures in the movie that we see earlier in the movie. That's Unicron's horn. And she's telling this guy who says like, "Hey, are you lost?" or "Who are you?" And she basically tells him he doesn't like to be touched like that. And it just she gives like this evil smile, and she gives like that like weird like pixelated kind of disguise face that we saw in Transformers 2. So this brings up the question, first of all, why are they still making these fucking movies? Second of all, Michael Bay, who says he's done, quote unquote, after these movies, he's still leaving his fingerprints all over this movie. He's leaving, like, if you're really done with these movies, then let whoever is coming in to replace you as a director decide where the story should go. Even if you have a writer's room, it doesn't matter. Like, you should. I can't believe they have a fucking writer's room for these movies, but even with that, like, you should let this new director come in and tell his or her own story. Not like saying, "Oh, hey, this is where I want you, my replacement, to take this movie from this point forwards." No, that's just dumb. Third of all, if Earth is Unicron, or if Unicron came to Earth during Pangea, because that's mentioned by John Turturro's character. Yes, John Turturro is in this movie. I did not mention him because his fucking character serves no purpose in this movie. He's just in it for another comic relief. If he came during Pangea and just decided to stay here, what the hell happens when Unicron wakes up? Or when he decides to transform? Does Earth get destroyed? Like, completely? Like, is that it? Like, that's how the series ends? Earth just fucking dies and it gets destroyed? Do we have to go live off in space if there's even any humans left after that happens? Or, like, at that point it's like, oh, well, all the humans are dead, we're just following Transformers now. Again, that requires some major thinking from the writers in the, quote, writer's room for the Transformers. Good luck with that. Anyway. Yeah, so like I said, all in all, it's not good, guys. It's not a good movie. It fucking blows. Literally. So I wrote in my non-spoiler review that I feel sorry for Anthony Hopkins, because Anthony Hopkins, God bless him. I don't know if they held like a family member hostage, and like you're not getting this family member back until you do this movie. Like, I don't know like what convinced him to do this movie. I think even he said during an interview, I did the movie and I still don't know what the fuck is going on, or I don't know what the fuck is this movie's about. He probably didn't say fuck, but I'm just adding it for a dramatic effect. But even he did say that, though. I did remember an interview of him saying that. Or the headline, anyway. I didn't see the interview. I saw the headline. I feel sorry for him. And God bless him, because he plays this role like straight-laced. You know, he gets a little, like, he starts mumbling in this movie. And they start playing like, oh, he's an old man, he's been through a lot, maybe he's going a little bit crazy. But he plays it so seriously. And God bless him. I feel sorry for him, for having to have this on his on this resume. But anyway, I also wrote in my non-spoiler written review that this movie, Transformers: The Last Knight, is a steaming pile, not just a steaming pile of shit. It is a steaming pile of combined shits that you only fuel and set on fire every time you buy a ticket. And I stand by that statement. And I can say that, and there will still be people out there that say, this is a good movie. Or there will still be people out there that say, this is a good movie series. And if you like it, hey, fine, that's good for you. That's great. Again, I enjoyed the first one. I enjoyed parts of the third one. But this is just... I can't wait for the series to get rebooted, which probably won't happen anytime soon. I'm done. I'm done talking about this movie, because it's just fucking terrible. My rating, I would literally give this movie a 0, but there's some cool like shots and stuff throughout the movie. Shots, no plot points or anything like that, just shots, and some of the jokes were worked. And I fucking hate this movie. Transformers: The Last Knight. My official rating is a 2 out of 5. I wanted to give this movie a 0 so bad, but there are some stuff that I do like. Actually, in my written review, I gave it a 2 out of 5. I don't know why I gave it a 2 out of 5. I think I'm being very generous with a 2 out of 5. You know what? No, fuck that. 1 out of 5. I'm giving Transformers: The Last Knight a 1 out of 5. That's my official rating. I think I'm gonna go back and edit my Transformers written review to 1 out of 5. I don't know why would I give it a 2? No. 1 out of 5. Okay. I'm done. I'm done talking about Transformers. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you guys this week. So thank you guys so much for listening to this review. I really could have just kept going, but I don't want to make this review long, because Transformers: The Last Knight doesn't deserve it. So there you go. That's my review. So let me know what you thought of Transformers: The Last Knight. Do you agree with me? Is it stupid? Is it just me? Am I just hating? I don't know. Let me know what you thought of Transformers: The Last Knight, wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this. I didn't mention on the podcast last week, the podcast is now officially on iTunes. I will put a link down below in the description/show notes area if you're listening to this out of iTunes, like if you're listening to this on SoundCloud or YouTube. I forgot to put a link in the podcast last week. I will definitely put a link down here to go check that out. If you're listening to this on iTunes, thank you. Hello, iTunes listener. Thank you so much for listening, and give me a rating, subscribe, and leave me a review, and I will review your podcast, or review your podcast. Or if you have a podcast, hey, why not? I will give you a shout out and read your review here on the podcast. I do want to give a shout out to one of my friends, Sam. Thank you for giving the first review of the podcast on iTunes. Like I mentioned on Twitter, you're the real MVP. So yeah, go leave me a rating on iTunes, give me a review, subscribe, And yeah, so next week, or this week I should say, movies that are coming out, but we'll be reviewing them next week, hopefully. I don't want to promise anything. Again, next week is July 4th, Independence Day, at least here in the States. And I don't know if I'll have time because I'm maybe going somewhere or have some other plans, but I will be doing a review. Maybe it won't be on Wednesday. Maybe I'll just make the podcast next week on Friday, just really long. I don't know yet. We'll see. But next week I will definitely be trying to review. There's 3 movies coming out that I'm going to go watch. I don't know if I'll be reviewing all of them. They're The House, the new Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler movie. Despicable Me 3, also coming out this week. And the big movie I'm looking forward toward is Baby Driver. I really want to talk about that. So if I do end up doing a spoiler-filled review podcast, it will be early in the week. But if for whatever reason I can't do it because, whatever, I'll probably make the podcast, the end of the week podcast, the movie news roundup podcast, extra long that week. Next week. Yeah, next week. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week, to the spoiler for review podcast, I'd say, not the actual podcast. I mean, this is still a podcast, but the movie news roundup podcast is at the end of the week. It's the Transformers Last Night effect. This movie's 2.5 hours long. I felt winded. I felt tired after watching this, and I feel tired just talking about it. Alright, I'm done. I'm done bashing Transformers. And I'm sorry if I'm yelling too much. It's just this fucking sucks. Alright, so thank you guys so much for listening to the spoiler review of Transformers The Last Night. Again, hopefully I get to do a spoiler for review next week about these movies, and I'm gonna try to do it early. Again, it's July 4th. I'll probably have family over, so I don't want to make any promises about that. But if I can't do it at the beginning of the week, I will definitely do it at the end of the week during the weekly roundup of news. Speaking of that, that podcast is still happening this week as well. Every Friday, there will be a weekly roundup of movie news at the end of the week. And we'll talk about those. We'll talk about the movies. We'll talk about Baby Driver, Despicable Me 3, and The House. Give you guys a lowdown on those. And yeah. So once again, thank you guys so much for listening to this spoiler review filled podcast of Transformers: The Last Night. Let me know what you thought about the movie down below in the comments section. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can go over to the Facebook page at facebook.com/moviepit. That's facebook.com/moviepit. There will be a link in the description area / show notes area if you want to go click on that. And if not, you can also go over to, if not then, that didn't sound right, but what I'm trying to say is if you also want to leave me your thoughts, you can go over to the YouTube page, also be linked down below in the description / show notes area. Yes, even though if you're listening to this on YouTube, it's kind of redundant, but or if you're listening to this on SoundCloud, also down below will be my social media accounts, to my Twitter and my Instagram. If you want to leave me your thoughts on Transformers: The Last Night over there as well, you can. Whew. That was a lot. That was a lot to get to. Alright, I'm done, guys. For real, this time. I'm done. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Be sure to come in. Be sure to come back. Not come in. I guess you can come in. Be sure to come back later this week for the weekly roundup of news podcast. And that's it. My name's Chris. As always, go enjoy your week and go watch some movies. Except Transformers: Last Night. Don't do it. Just save your money.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!